Welcome, guys. This is Scott from Oak Societies here to drop another episode of amazing content for you. Today is going to be my deep dive episode. This is going to kind of be a weekly thing that I'm going to be starting on this channel instead of just doing the news, doing episodes of the news cycles, even though a bunch has happened since my last episode, which is fine. I may do another one tomorrow. If not, it'll be Saturday. But this one, guys, is going to be a deep dive into how the CIA pretty much started the hippie movement, and eventually that led into the CIA's heavily involvement into the music industry and rock and roll music as a whole. I love rock music. I was in a band. I still play guitar, so this stuff is very close to me. And again, guys, this is just another example of how the history that's told to us is not what is actually going on and what is not actually happening. There's always something deeper going on behind closed doors. So today, guys, that is what we're going to be getting into, and we're going to be sticking on this one topic today. It's probably going to be a shorter episode, which is fine. We'll jump right into it. But again, as I always like to do, I'd like to thank my fans and followers. So far up to this point, guys, we're up to 430 subscribers, which is fantastic. Keep it coming in. Hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button like you guys always do. And I'm glad you're enjoying the content because I'm loving what I'm doing still. So let's get into it. This was written, I came across this by Rob Schultz Museum. He is the owner of this blog here, and he compiled a bunch of information about musicians, the hippie movement, and the CIA's involvement, and a lot of cool connections that I thought you guys would find interesting. So the article title is "The Hippie Movement Was Created by the CIA, plus David McGowan, Inside the LC, The Strange But Mostly True Story of Laurel Canyon, and the Birth of the Hippie Generation." Let's get into it. Of course, most people who are blues and rock and roll fans have heard about Robert Johnson and how he sold his soul to the devil at the crossroads in exchange for brilliant musical skills. Whether this is a myth or if it's true, I leave for you to decide, but strange things are happening behind the scenes in the music industry, and unfortunately, the rock stars most of us have worshipped are not always what we thought they were. Although the Robert Johnson story could be a myth, he is not the only one claiming to have sold his soul to the devil for fame and fortune. There are quite a few admitting to the same thing, where Bob Dylan is one of them, as we shall see later in this article. And guys, we're going to go through a bunch of artists here and see what their connections are to MK Ultra, a bunch of weird stuff. And the funny thing is, if you guys still have Netflix, I unfortunately still do have Netflix. I will be getting rid of it at some point. But this guy, Robert Johnson here, there is a short documentary about him, about 45 minutes. I actually watched it before even knowing about this article. And his story was weird. He was a rock and roll blues guy, and something happened to him where he disappeared, and literally overnight he became like this musical god at the guitar, and he could sing like amazing lyrics, everything. And literally this happened overnight according to his friends. But something did happen to him. And that's what the story is talking about, how he sold his soul to the devil. He asked the devil to give him, amazing powers to play music, but at the cost of his own soul. So a lot of weird stuff, a lot of Luciferian, satanic stuff coming up in this article, unfortunately. But we need to know this, guys. We need to know what's really going on out there. So the music industry as a propaganda machine. First of all, before we start putting the pieces together, we need to dissolve the myth that the music industry has our best interests in mind. By now, more and more people become aware of that. This world is to a major degree controlled by a secret cabal we call the Illuminati, a shadow government, if you will, who wants to create a new world order in one world government. They have already taken over a big part of world politics, business, education, and religious movements. This fact is accepted by many because the evidence is overwhelming, and so why would this cabal, who wants total control and the ability to take over our minds and thinking processes, leave the film and music industries alone? They haven't. They have actually targeted these two industries heavily. We know Hollywood is filled with just evil, disgusting people, and the music industry as well. So let's take first look at Bob Dylan. Put yourself in these people's shoes and you will understand what I'm talking about. If I were them, the music and film industries would be two of the first things I wanted to control. Why is that? Because here you have a golden opportunity to influence the masses and lead them in any direction you want, all you need to do is to create superheroes, gods that people can look up to and follow. Although Bob Dylan sings in Subterranean Homesick Blues in 1965, don't follow leaders, watch the parking meters. He must have known pretty well that although they are true, these are just empty words. By writing those lines, his audience would be even more attached to him and he would really create followers. So it's a contradiction, and some would call it reverse psychology. Now that's very interesting, because we know a lot of people think lyrics are just, they're just words, but making music myself, words have much deeper meaning than what's being portrayed. You really have to think about where the artist is coming from. And you guys are going to see a lot of weird psychology and a lot of weird connections in these upcoming bands and performers. But don't forget, we're also going to get into the hippie movement. This is all going to be tied into one thing today. So we have Black Sabbath. We see a similar phenomenon when Black Sabbath is singing about how we should fear the devil and cry to God for help. How come then they are not creating a Christian fellowship, but instead it has the opposite effect? It is because they are actually leading the audience into violence and darkness by tuning down the guitars to lower vibrations, turning up the volume to maximum, and repeating hypnotic riffs over and over again. What stays in people's minds is not that we should turn to God, but that Black Sabbath is singing about the devil and demon possession, and it's cool. People start getting interested in mysticism and occultism of the darkest kind instead, as per the plan. It's mind control, my friends, but it's not just the audience that is mind controlled, so are many of the artists as well. Which brings me to the real purpose of this article, to expose who is pulling the strings on the artist, ultimately, and us. So, depending on your religious beliefs, guys, it's not really about religion in this, but it's really about what the elite believe in, as far as the devil, worshiping the devil, whoever these evil entities are. And it's all about controlling the population. The elite have the power while the rest of us are slaves to serve the masters. That's what the ultimate goal is, the Illuminati and the Cabal. And we're going to see right here, right now, what is the connection between all these big rock stars? Jimi Hendrix, Jim Morrison, Frank Zappa, Papa John Phillips, Stephen Stills. We're going to see David Crosby. We're going to see some connections here, guys. What ties all these guys together? It's public knowledge now, due to the Freedom of Information Act, that MK Ultra, mind control, is the real deal, and that psychiatrists working for the CIA used sophisticated mind control techniques on people who had no wish to participate. This destroyed the lives of the victims, and many of them died as a result of the experiments. The government created Manchurian candidates to use in the Cold War, but also as political assassins in general. However, we are told that these experiments stopped sometime in the 1970s, and we know that's not true, and are now just another dark chapter in American history. Victims and researchers are telling us different, though. These experiments have continued up to this day, which they have, but under other code names, and are now even more sophisticated. The Illuminati scientists are very knowledgeable about the human mind and how it works, and to understand how to manipulate it. These mind control techniques are what has been used in the music industry and are still used today in grunge, gangster rap, hip-hop, or any new genre. Same old techniques with new labels. And just to drop in real quick here, guys, if you haven't seen, I don't know, what's it called? Edge of Wonder. I don't know if this episode that I'm about to talk about is on their channel where you have to subscribe to, or it's on their YouTube, but I believe it's probably on the subscribe channel where you have to pay for it. But they right now did a 3 or 4 part series of the music industry, and when I saw gangster rap and hip hop, they were really talking about how gangster rap was really pushed for a long time, and that culture was pushed for a long time because the rising amount of private prisons in the country at that time was growing, and they needed people to fill up these prisons. And the correlations they draw between what kind of major influencers, as far as people in the music industry, as far as managers, producers, they were kind of pushed in roundabout ways to get more of these gangster rappers, you could say, and to change the tune of these lyrics to sound more like, to be into crimes, drugs, sex, the women, everything, right? To influence a generation, which would cause them to be criminals. Not all of them, obviously. Not everyone that listens to rap turns into a criminal. That's not what I'm saying at all, because that's not true. But when you see the evidence that they portray, you see that this stuff was allowed for the ultimate goal is to land these people in private prisons, making these people that own these prisons super rich, while your family members, whoever related to yourself, are suffering and your life's lost in these prisons. Very interesting stuff, but here we go. Let's continue. David McGowan, a brilliant researcher, is in the process of publishing a very detailed and lengthy series of articles called Inside the LC, the strange but mostly true story of Laurel Canyon and the birth of the hippie generation, in the first 12 parts published here on the Illuminati News website, and the rest will be published as soon as David has finished them. It is an amazing body of research where he effectively is pointing out the fact that more often than not, the top artists within the music and film industries, their managers and producers have military and or military intelligence connections. Very interesting. Many are also involved in organized crime, drug dealing, murder, prostitution, child pornography, snuff movies, and black magic. Here are a few examples of the musicians from the hippie era who have family ties to people within the U.S. military. First, we have Jim Morrison of the Doors. His father was the U.S. Navy Admiral George Stephen Morrison. Jim was more or less brought up on a military base and abused by his father. We have Frank Zappa, son of Francis Zappa, a mathematician and chemist working for the U.S. defense industry. Frank himself, although one of those who was in the front line of creating the hippie movement, never made it a secret that he had nothing but contempt for this culture. He was also a great supporter of the Vietnam War. Frank married to Adelaide Gale Sloatman, who comes from a long line of career naval officers, including her father, who spent his life working on classified nuclear weapons research for the U.S. Navy. We have Papa John Phillips of the Mamas and Papas, son of a retired Marines Corps officer. John attended a series of elite military prep schools in the Washington, D.C. area, culminating in an appointment to the prestigious U.S. Naval Academy at Annapolis. Stephen Stills of Buffalo Springfield and Crosby Stills, Nash and Young, born to a military family. Stills was educated primarily at schools on military bases and at an elite military academias. We have David Crosby of the Byrds and Crosby Stills, Nash and Young, the son of an Annapolis graduate and World War II military intelligence officer, Major Floyd Delafield Crosby. And suffice to say that the Crosby family tree includes a truly dizzying array of U.S. senators and congressmen as well. State senators and assemblymen, governors, mayors, judges, Supreme Court justices, Revolutionary and Civil War generals, signers of the Declaration of Independence, and members of the Continental Congress. That's crazy. We have Jackson Brown, the product of a career military family. Brown's father was assigned to post-war reconstruction work in Germany, which very likely means that he was in the employ of the OSS. This was the precursor to the CIA. As readers of my understanding of the F word may recall, U.S. involvement in post-war reconstruction in Germany largely consisted, listen to this guys, of maintaining as much of the Nazi infrastructure as possible while shielding war criminals from capture and prosecution. Against that backdrop, Jackson Brown was born in a military hospital in Heidelberg, Germany. So guys, and one of the most ones you guys will probably know out of all of them, we have Michael Jeffery, who was Jimi Hendrix's manager. Michael Jeffery admitted to being an intelligence agent. Information was uncovered by Hendrix biographers Harry Shapiro and Caesar Glebeck in their book Jimi Hendrix Electric Gypsy from Rock. Historian R. Gary Patterson in his book Hellbounds on Their Trail, Tales from the Rock and Roll Grave, and a bunch of others, and this is the following of the summary from their collectives. Jeffrey often boasted of undercover work against the Russians or murder, mayhem, and torture in foreign countries. Jeffrey's father said his son had been stationed in Egypt years earlier and could speak Russian. Friends of Hendrix suspected Jeffrey was crooked in that the friends, confiscated documents from his office which indicated he was embezzling large amounts of money from Jimi's concert performances. The friends gave the documents to Hendrix, who reportedly took legal actions to recover the embezzled money. In July of 1970, 2 months before his death, Hendrix broke all communications with Jeffrey. At that time, Hendrix told film director Chuck Wine, "The next time I go to Seattle, we'll be in a pine box." 2 days after Hendrix's death, Michael Jeffrey confessed to recording engineer Alan Douglas that he was involved in the murder. In my opinion, Douglas reportedly stated, Jeffrey hated Hendrix. Joni Mitchell. Her father, Bill Anderson, was an officer in the Royal Canadian Air Force. During the war years, she moved with her parents to a number of bases in Western Canada. Colonel Tom Parker, Elvis Presley's manager at about the age of 20, joined the United States Army despite the fact he was not a U.S. citizen. He was Dutch and his real name was Andreas Cornelius, and a bunch of other names that I'm not going to try to pronounce. All these military connections are hardly coincidences. I strongly recommend that you read the whole series of articles by David McCown. It is stunning to learn that all these people mentioned above moved approximately at the same time to Laurel Canyon in California without knowing each other beforehand. At least that's what we were supposed to believe. And there they started the hippie movement together. And here's the key: they all had military connections. So guys, do you think this is a coincidence that all of these musicians, all of these people, all of the mothers, the fathers, anyone that's related, they all moved to Laurel Canyon in California without knowing each other, and that's where the hippie movement began. That's exactly where it started. And again, we were told this was a movement to oppose Vietnam. I don't know. For us who used to believe that the hippie movement was a grassroots movement against the Vietnam War, and the authority better think again. David shows us without any doubt that the hippie culture, which started out in Laurel Canyon, California, has had shitty origins to say the least, and corruption, crime, murder, and you name it, followed in its trail and was part of the daily life of the so-called peace movement, which escalated into the Charles Manson murders. Manson himself, of course, was a central figure in the hippie peace movement and good friends with, among others, Dennis Wilson of the Beach Boys and Neil Young. Very interesting stuff. Very interesting. So we're going to move into mind control, occultism, Satanism, and rock music. We have Fritz Springmeier. Occultism and science go hand in hand, and one wouldn't do well without the other. There are several excellent books written on the subject of occultism and Satanism, among which Fritz Springmeier's and Cisco Wheeler's The Illuminati Formula is perhaps one of the better in the genre. In this book, among other things, they mention that the music industry, and the country music industry in particular, is loaded with artists who work as mind control programmers, and many of the musicians are mind control slaves with split personalities, themselves victims of MK Ultra mind control. Mentioned are Chris Christopherson, Jerry Lee Lewis, Glenn Campbell, and Willie Nelson as being programmers working for the Illuminati. The country music industry is nothing but a front for secret Illuminati drug smuggling, according to Fritz Springmeier, Cisco Wheeler, former Illuminati mind-controlled slave Kathy O'Brien, and other victims of MK Ultra who have come forth to speak the truth, fearing for their lives while doing so. In Monarch programming, which we know is another piece of the MK Ultra, which they call the offspring of the MK Ultra in this article, the use of mirrors is a basic important tool to make split multiple personalities. This may sound esoteric and unbelievable to those who are not all familiar with these techniques, but after reading Springmeier's and Wheeler's books, the following becomes much clearer. The mental mirrors which are programmed into the victim create thousands of alters, artificial personalities which they can be programmed in whatever the way the Illuminati programmer wants. It's very similar to partitioning a computer hard drive into hundreds, sometimes even thousands of partitions, and fill each partition with whatever information you want. When opening one of the hard drive partitions, you can access what is in there, but the specific section of the hard drive doesn't know what the other sections contain, so it's very compartmentalized. This is very useful if you, for example, want to create a public person who is an excellent entertainer with a gently personality as a front. Someone who appears to be a balanced family person, and that by using trigger words, he or she can change into a cold-blooded killer, a drug dealer, a spy, or whatever you want to use him for. No one would have suspected this person because whatever criminal act he or she is programmed to do, it's literally out of character. And just like the example with the hard drive, the victim himself is often not aware of his different personalities and often doesn't even remember the crime he committed. Now, what does that sound like, guys? Just getting off topic a little bit about the MK Ultra. Doesn't that sound like these deep states, the deep staters that use these people, these unhinged people for shootings? Every time they need a distraction? That's exactly what this sounds like, and it's not just, as we can see, used for people in these random shootings, right? From what we're seeing here, it's mostly it is in the music industry as well. So we're talking about mirrors, making split personalities, right? So this is what they're talking about in this book in regards to how they would train children to make their own split personalities. The child must learn to match identical items very, very early, even before they can speak. This is so they'll be able to build mirror images into their mind. All the senses are trained for building the mirror images. For instance, such as silks and cottons can be used for a sense of touch. In chapter 1, page 12, the elements that make up who a person is, personality elements such as memories, are fractured. These fragments have in turn often been built up into full-blown personalities with all the elements of full-blown personalities. There is no, quote, real person. Just as if you smash a mirror into 1,000 pieces, there is no single piece that is the real original mirror, but rather simply fragments that can turn and operate as mirrors. Now listen to that, guys. That came directly from this book, Spring, Myers, and Wheeler's book in regards to these mirrors for the MK Ultra training program. Now let's take a look here and look at some lyrics that were written by Jimi Hendrix. With this in mind, it's interesting to read the lyrics from the song called Room Full of Mirrors by Jimi Hendrix. The lyrics go, I used to live in a room full of mirrors. All I could see was me. Well, I took my spirit and I crashed my mirrors. Now the whole world is here for me to see. I've got a whole world that's here for me to see. Now I'm searching for my love to be. Broken glass was falling in my brain, cutting and screaming and crying in my head. Broken glass was falling in my brain. It used to fall on my dreams and cut me in my bed. It used to fall on my dreams and cut me in my bed. I said making love was strange in my bed. Weird stuff, right, guys? You think it's just a coincidence? I'm not sure. The book and movie The Wizard of Oz is used in Illuminati mind control on a regular basis. This has been confirmed by many mind control survivors. Therefore, it is interesting to note that Pink Floyd's incredibly successful album The Dark Side of the Moon from 1973 seems to be tightly connected to the Wizard of Oz movie from 1939 in an interesting way, possibly to trigger mind control survivors. Here's a quote from Wikipedia. Now, let's take this, some of these quotes are from Wikipedia, which isn't always the greatest source of information. So again, take this with a grain of salt. When the album is played simultaneously with the 1939 film The Wizard of Oz, numerous images from the film appear to synchronize with the music and lyrics. Band members firmly state the phenomenon dubbed Dark Side of the Rainbow or Dark Side of Oz by fans is a coincidence. Jim Morrison, the lead singer in The Doors, who died from a heart attack at the age of 27, admitted to being possessed, and his band members interviewed after his death acknowledged the fact that they themselves noticed this, especially when they played on stage. Jim was convinced he was possessed by the spirit of a dead shaman who also was his musical guide and from whom he got his charisma. Whether this entity was actually what possessed him or not is up for debate, but there is no doubt that Jim was possessed by something. It shows clearly in this video clip after Jim left the Doors, he claimed that the shaman had abandoned him and he was alone with himself, which made him very lost and confused. He complained that his charisma and musical drive were gone due to the shaman had left his body. Crazy, right, guys? So just take all that in for a moment. You can always dig into this stuff yourselves, obviously. Do your own research. But again, I'm going to link this article into the description down below in the notes so you guys can look at this stuff too. There's a million different kinds of links, but I'm just going to narrow this down to one episode today. The origins of rock music. Most people think that rock music started in the 1950s and was a new musical invention. In fact, rock music is an ancient music form originating from the old mystery religions. Since the launching of the Beatles as an international project via TV in 1963, rock has been the most influential recruiter into Satanism. Rock was created and is still coordinated by Crowley's followers and by the OTO network in cooperation with Wicca. It is not so incidentally also the Satanist biggest moneymaker and believed to provide the chief logistical support for deployments and other activities of the OTO Wicca efforts worldwide. There is nothing spontaneous or accidental about, in quotes, rock. It is a product of classical studies of the ancient Phrygian terrorist cult of Satan Dionysus, the model for the Roman Bacchic cults of similar characteristics. Crowley's control of the rock industry has been documented by a team of private investigators who have also noted that in addition to the Satanist lyrics, Satanist messages embedded subliminally in rock recordings are a key feature of the subversive operation. The rock rhythm itself is copied from the old Dionysian Bacchic cults, even without the drugs and sexual orgies, which are characteristic features of hardcore rock affairs. Repeated, frequent, hours-long exposure to constant repetition of rock rhythms produces lasting, drug-like effects in the mind of the victim. Reducing sexual practices to the level of bestiality is a crucial feature of Satanism in all historical periods studied from this cult. And we have Aleister Crowley with the same occult symbol in the middle of the pyramid as of Bob Dylan's logo. For those unfamiliar with Aleister Crowley mentioned in the quote above, he was a Freemason, a magician, an occultist, and a Grand Master of the Ordo Templi Orientis, which is an occult order based on the teachings of the old Egyptian and Eastern mystery religions, still alive and practiced in today's society, often by people in high positions inside business, politics, and entertainment. Many rock musicians, such as Jimmy Page and John Bonham, and he's deceased, and former Led Zeppelin, Sting, the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, Ozzy Osbourne, the Eagles, David Bowie, and the Doors, to name a few, see Crowley as their mentor and spiritual guide. Jimmy Page has one of the largest collections of Crowley's books in the world and even bought his property by Lake Loch Ness in Scotland. Crowley named himself to be 666, which is the Satan's number. So you have a guy named Aleister Crowley who is very into Freemasons, magician, and occults, and these guys here got, as you can see, Jimmy Page, John Bonham, Led Zeppelin, the Beatles, Rolling Stones, Ozzy Osbourne, the Eagles. All these guys were highly influenced by Mr. Crowley here, which is very interesting. So what does all this have? What's the whole point of this? In the beginning of this article, we talked about Hollywood and the music industry as propaganda machines, which is exactly what they are. Entertainment, yes, but with a specific message. You may say that, of course, there are rock groups that are overly satanic and destructive, but there are also artists that are gentle, writing beautiful songs about love and harmony. How can they possibly be part of the agenda? But they are, often without their knowledge, and this is how it works in a nutshell. The Illuminati works with the principles of yin and yang. There has to be balance. That's why many of them also are philanthropists to counter the negativity they are involved in. If all music was dark and satanic in its nature, most people would reject it, which is common sense. There has to be music for everybody, but they also know that where you put your intention and your energy, that's where you get results. And that is a truth, guys. That is like a universal truth right there. And if you watch Hollywood movies and listen to the lyrics of your music heroes and are knowledgeable about the occult and the Illuminati agenda, you will soon discover how much occult symbolism and covert promotion for world government and unity of all people and races into one united world there is in the context. There is nothing wrong with being united, and many people embrace it, such as the New Age movement, another culture created by the Illuminati. However, they don't know what uniting means in this case and what the end product will be. They only know that their heroes are singing about love and unity. It sounds like a good thing. The powerly is not stupid, and they know how the human mind works. So the conclusion of this article. From what we have discussed in this article, we can see the pattern. It is no coincidence that so many mega rock stars have military and intelligence family ties. It's in with this military complex and the intelligence agencies that mind control takes place. And many of these rock stars are either under mind control or just greedy, willing to follow any agenda to get an abundance of money, sex, and drugs. We also see that behind it all lurks the secret societies with their occult knowledge. The guru for many rock stars is Aleister Crowley, a magician who spent his life in and out of asylums due to the rituals he practiced and all the drugs he took. Also, people close to him had a strange tendency to die before their time, but he had a great occult knowledge, and this knowledge is used within the music film industries as well as high up in the Illuminati. The reason why we have a financial meltdown, why life is so hectic, and why all these wars are going on over the planet is because there is a secret, powerful cabal of occult practitioners behind the scenes creating this chaos with a long-term goal to accomplish a one-world government. But on the bright side, people are currently waking up to this fact and starting to get their voices heard. And the article ends there. But guys, what are the chances that this Crowley guy, let's just go back and just recap this real quick. This Aleister Crowley guy, he was a magician who spent his life in and out of asylums due to the rituals he practiced. And all these major bands that we just talked about before, the Eagles, Led Zeppelin, were all influenced. Ozzy Osbourne, they're all influenced by this guy, and they held him in high regard. And just so happens to be somebody that was into occults and, Illuminati world government stuff. Very, very strange, but not a coincidence, not at all. And guys, and I'm not. This is my thing because I love music. I listen to a lot of the bands out there today. You have to be careful what you put your energy into. My parents for a long time always told me they were always worried about the music that I listened to, but when I was a kid, I always said, "Man, it's just words. It has no connection, But they were right. There is a connection. Music is vibrations, and us as humans are vibrational beings. We're energetic beings. So if we know it or not, the music does have some kind of effect on us. But we have to look at the lyrics as well. There's a lot of bands that I'm coming across right now that I had no idea. The stuff that's just out there in plain sight in the public is just insane. It's just crazy. I'm trying to think of some examples, but I can't get any at the top of my head right now. But it's out there. You guys have to find it yourself. I'm not coming down on anybody that listens to any type of music. You can listen to what you want. Just shield yourself from evil entities. That's all I'm saying. So, and just another thing too, when you look at like Madonna, for example, all her live shows, they look like legitimate like sacrifice stages. People with bullhorns and blood and very satanic weird stuff going on. And it's right out in the public and people are cheering and going nuts and they have no idea what's going on behind the scenes. So I thought this was a really cool, interesting article. I want to go into more depth as far as with not just the music but also artwork. That's going to be a part 2 to this. I don't know if I'm going to make a huge series out of it, but I thought it was very interesting. And again, guys, this is just for me to bring some light to some history as well as to what a lot of the things that we were taught growing up were lies. The schools, they're set up to give us all the same story about history, so we remain imprisoned to the same narratives. That's what's going on here. So, again, I'm here to help you wake up as well. I am by no means a guru on any of this stuff. I just find this information, I study it, and I get it out to the public, and then you decide what to do with it. But all with good intention, obviously. So that's going to wrap it up for today's episode, guys. Again, thank you for supporting this channel. I am going to actually open a business account once I hit 500 subscribers so I can get donations. I can start making some money off the channel. Obviously, I would like to make some monetary benefits from all this stuff because I'd love doing it, guys, but if I can make some money on the side doing it, that would be great. So that's going to happen. Hit that subscribe button, like and share with your friends and family. Get the word out there, guys. Watch my other episodes and get up to date on what's going on. So I might make an episode tomorrow. Just got to see. If not, I'll probably make one Saturday. So until then, guys, stay safe and stay woke.